Hello all, it's been a month, so you know what time that means. It's time for another devlog on C.W.I.S, the tactical Zora shooter where you control the weapons of a naval ship. Sadly, due to forgetting to press record quite often, I don't have many visuals this week, so you'll see more of just essentially gameplay of both the build, yes, a build, shock horror, and of some older gameplay from older versions, so bear with me on that front. So, like always, I start off with a lot of bug fixes. Yay, the fun. Everyone's deal with bugs. It just happens in every project. You're guaranteed to get bugs. Come on, it's just a life of a software dev or game dev in regard. So in this case, a lot of the bugs were regarding like the weapons and stuff. So weapons like the missile launcher and the 5-inch. The 5-inch had a problem with the reloading, didn't work. Like you couldn't actually reload the gun properly. That was quite easy to fix. And I had the same problem with the missile launcher, where you could just constantly shoot missiles regardless of how many ammo you had in the clip. Because obviously the missile launcher doesn't use the ammo count by itself. It uses like a reloading system. Because the reloading visuals didn't actually update quick enough, they would essentially just let you shoot constantly. I had a bind code where I didn't check for it was the actual weapon reloaded, which was my mistake. Just a Boolean check. Also fixed the pause in game over screens to actually appear, because previously this wouldn't work, or they would appear, but then they wouldn't resume the game correctly, or wouldn't restart the game correctly. Things like that. One of the major things this month essentially is the upgrades. I did this last month as well, as you may know. But the upgrades in the last version were a bit buggy still. They had problems with the display not quite rendering correctly, and obviously our upgrades weren't actually applying to things. I have now made up the upgrades actually apply to things now. I think missile launchers I haven't actually done the code for yet for the actual upgrades themselves to do something, apart from one or two things I think. But the actual layout for the actual UI was code generated previously. This proved very problematic just because it wouldn't work. You get this weird layout glitch where when you reloaded the layout it just wouldn't be in order at all. It will be like clumped up together. This is something with Unity's UI system not updating when you want it to. Also something probably with the scaling factor that I was doing for panels. But because of that, I decided just to make them all just predefined. So each layout for each weapon is now just set up from the beginning essentially. And then when you want to upgrade a weapon, it just opens whichever screen's the right weapon. It means you can also do a lot more. So for instance, I now added upgrade costs to each upgrade. So each upgrade costs either 1 to however many upgrade points I want that make it cost. So like some of them might cost like 3 or 4 upgrade points instead of 1. There's a bit of a cost UI to show this with a little star icon, kind of matching the icon on the actual upgrade button itself. On top of this, there's also now an improved upgrade locking system, so I can actually lock upgrades behind other ones a lot easier. I just define them as a pre-requirement of this upgrade in the inspector. And it knows, okay, I need to upgrade before I can purchase this one. Still got 1 or 2 bugs with the system, obviously. When you purchase an upgrade sometimes and change weapon, it seems to just doesn't actually update the UI for some reason. I think it's just an event unsubscribing and not resubbing. And also another thing where like the upgrade cycle still floats off into nowhere after you upgrade for so long. Weird bugs like that. I've got to figure out what's going wrong there eventually. It's a douche-ring thing, so it's probably I need to animation instead potentially. We'll see. A little peek behind the curtain here. So the main reason I took on these projects, both Project Tilly, which is a game project before this, and C.W.I.S, was to test my assets. So Project Tilly I stopped early on, I think February, March, because of just I couldn't do the actual modelling for it. It's a bit annoying. I'm not very good with 3D modelling, and Blender was still a bit of a learning curve for me. I used to use 3ds Max in uni, but I haven't learned Blender yet because it's such a different kind of setup and workflow. I'm still getting the hang of it. So to get the hang of that, I can't really finish that project at all, so I've kind of left it as is. And I moved on to C.W.I.S. The main goal was essentially to test out my asset store stuff. So if you didn't know, I have 5 code assets on the Unity asset store currently. These are essentially tools to make games. I have an audio manager, a save manager, a leaderboard manager, a transform colors, which essentially just changes the transform component a little bit, and a build implementer essentially. This first project actually currently uses the build implementer project, which I know works quite well, and uses the leaderboard manager currently. It doesn't use save, but does have it in the project. I just don't use it currently because there's not much to save. And it does actually use audio, but uses an experimental version of 3.0, which I haven't yet released. But the main goal essentially is to test these assets, find flaws and find issues, and I have found a few, especially on the leaderboard one. I found very recently there's a few issues. I will get to that in a moment. But yeah, essentially that's the main project of these things. So after this game's kind of got to a point where I'm going to stop it briefly, I will be working on asset store stuff again, getting these flaws fixed so they're all good to go. So yeah, it's nice to move on to the leaderboard and scoring, which I've added in this month. Scoring is essentially the same as like the old Jam version. You essentially score points from doing actions in the game, such as shooting down missiles, being efficient with your ammo, surviving for X amount of time, stuff like that. Then at the end of the round, when you lose eventually, because you will eventually lose, you eventually add an entry to a leaderboard. In this case, I'm doing it so you add a leaderboard to top 15 instead of just overall. It saves a bit of space on the game as well as it just means you can add entries based on how you do. The idea is to have a local and online leaderboards. I did have an online one, a Jam version, but it used an old PHP script that wasn't very secure, and I was going on my own web server, and I wanted something a bit different this time. Because of reliability issues with that version, I want to make it so I use an online tool instead. So the local one essentially just saves the top 15. If your local entry is like one of the top 15 on your entries, it goes, okay, this entry should be added to the online leaderboard, and it tries to add it online. If you're offline for some reason, it should eventually save it and then upload it when you can. That's just the idea. I haven't done the online side of it yet, but the offline works fine. There's now also an entry on the menu of the game where you can open leaderboards and see all the entries that you've got along with the online ones as and when I get them there. So yeah, in this week, just before this video actually, literally like yesterday, day before yesterday, I was making some builds to see if the game actually worked. And dear God, it did not. Just a few errors. Thankfully, this was quite easy to spot because it was actually just a multi-scene issue. So if you didn't know, multi-scene is a package I've been developing for working with more than one scene at once. So you can stack scenes together and just spread out the work a bit more. So like you can have some UI bits be in a separate scene. You can have the player be in its own scene, stuff like that, and it all tracks fine. But because I made some changes to this version, it was annoying. So I made some changes where it was static instead of non-static. Previously, I had to have a manager in every scene to get the scenes to load. In this version I made it so it was static instead, but I forgot to add a script to actually load the group that was the default group, so it just loaded one scene and get a build, and it couldn't find anything, so it was trying to get references to things that were in a different scene, and it wouldn't like it because of that. So that was dumb. I credited that, and I think it's like every issue I had. So I'm hoping to get a build out around September. I don't know when September, but I'm hoping September. Yeah, you heard me right, build, shock horror. It's been some failures, I know. So the build so far is mostly working actually. I mean, what I made yesterday worked quite well. It's still got a few flaws in there, there's a few bugs in gameplay which I can fix quite easily. At least I think I can. And I've still got a few things to add, obviously, mechanically wise. I've got to add some way to get ammo, otherwise you're going to run out of ammo way too quickly. And I also need to add a few other things like that, and some other defensive abilities, some of the weapons, just to mix it up here and there. But arcade mode is what I'm going to go for. So arcade mode is essentially just the main like jam game mode where you have your ship trying to save it from missiles for as long as possible. That's pretty much it. So the plan is if it does well and gets a lot of interest and stuff, or enough interest that I'm willing to continue it onwards, I will continue working on it. And I have a whole lot of things to add, like campaigns, multiplayer, you know, they do quite a lot of new stuff. So if it doesn't do too well, I still plan to finish up this project a little bit further. This includes a 1v1 game mode where you can attack another player in local multiplayer setting. The setting is like same as arcade, but just with 1v1s, and instead of missiles coming at you, you shoot missiles at each other, essentially. So it's 1v1. You can also shoot the main gun at each other and stuff like that. This eventually culminate into the arcade project I started back at uni. I need to start a bit of a work on it, kind of rework on it, make a launch kind of base system, and it needs a bit more work still, and I've learned a lot more since I started that project to then improve it. But the idea was already added that project as a game, and then I can actually try an arcade. I actually have got an arcade cabinet in my room. It's been sitting here since uni. I made it for the actual FMP, but then COVID happened, so it never actually got seen by anybody. It's just been sitting here in my room, covered by a blanket for ages. So the idea is to make that be one of the first games on that project. When that actually works, and the question entirely, because I know things like launching other games and stuff. I plan to make a project where you put game projects inside of it, and you have to work with the constraints of it. The issue is obviously like things like physics might not work. I've got to figure out if I can make physics changes on the fly in as I build. If I can, then I have a solution for that and I can make every game work. But that's a problem for another time. We'll get to that in a future video hopefully. So that's about it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, if you do have any ideas, please let me know in the comments and anywhere else. I had quite a few good sessions of Game Jolt this month from the last video, which was actually very good. I plan to use some of those in future builds if I end up making it further. And if I don't, it's still good ideas that I like to hear, so it's always good to hear those things. Hope you have a great day, and that'll be all. Laters.